Howdy everyone. So this is lesson 1 of District 9. So we're going to be looking at theories surrounding the film, and obviously at this point you should definitely have watched the film, otherwise this lesson is going to make no sense to you at all. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at learning and applying a theory to do with narrative today. So let's look at starter then. So the starter activity. What are the stereotypical things that happen in an adventure, film or story? So this can be anyone you've seen. What are the typical things that you tend to see? So it could be about a certain character, a certain plot element. That's entirely up to you. Okay, so pause the video, and then in a second I'll go on to the next slide and come on up with some examples that you may have found. And pause. Okay, so let's look at some examples then. So first one could be the first trend that I discovered, which was introduced to a person with a terrible or boring life. So it could be Wreck-It Ralph not enjoying his life as a villain in a game. You've got Ray not enjoying being a scavenger in her on Jakku. You've got Anna from Frozen and her experience of being ignored by her sister, and you've got can't remember the kid's name. So the kid's name from Ready Player One, who has to live with finding this key important thing in this game day after day, and so they have a terrible boring life that they have to kind of combat or fight against. And then another example there is Bilbo. He has his daily life in the Shire, which isn't to say that these people have a life that they don't like. It's just that it's monotonous. It's the same thing day in, day out. Okay, so the second one. So a character begins an adventure. Finding Nemo, you've got he goes missing and then his dad has to go find him after he decides to go to school. You've got Po from Kung Fu Panda trying to become a ninja warrior. And you've got Frodo who decides to who needs to find a way of destroying the One Ring. And you've got Shrek. You can tell a lot of cartoons and Disney films. Not Disney. So Shrek has to go on an adventure in order to get a girl from a tower for the king in order to take back his swamp. Last one, Harry Potter. So his adventure begins when he finds out you're a wizard, Harry. Okay, so he finds out he's a wizard, and then he has to go ahead with his story. Now, the third one. So a magical / strange world is revealed in these adventure stories. So it could be in Harry Potter, where he learns the wizarding world, learns about Hogwarts, learns about Diagon Alley. In the Hunger Games, so she already knows the situation with her world, but understanding how the train system works and understanding what the capital looks like is new information for her, just as it is for us. You've got Jumanji, where when these people get transported into a game, they have to understand what's going on, what the rules are, etc. And you got Beauty and the Beast, where Belle, when she chooses to replace her father being captured, she has to discover the world of the Beast. It's a terrible film, but it's a good example. And so what we're looking at then is this guy called Zvetan Todorov, I think that's how you pronounce it, and his theory of how narratives work. He had this idea that every story, every film, every book, etc. has a certain flow, has a certain structure, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So it kind of fits in with these trends we've been looking at. So typical things you find, and he kind of formulated a 5 bullet point checklist of things that go into every single story. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that. So yeah, he's a 20th century theorist. I'm pretty sure he's dead now. And he came up with a theory for how stories are structured. Now, first task then after you start, I want you to choose one of these films, and I'd like you to plot the 5 stages of it. So try and condense the film into 5 plot elements. They don't necessarily have to be 5 sentences, but they do have to be 5 plot elements. So Lion King, Elf, Shrek or Frozen. If you've not seen any of them, first of all, sort your life out. But if you've not seen any of them, pick a film that you do know quite well, but make sure it's nothing too indie, otherwise it might not follow the structure as clearly as you might want to. So I'm thinking of a typical film. That's why I've chosen children's films. Okay, so this is his. In fact, let me go back a bit. So make sure you pause the video, do that, and then come back and we'll move on. Alright, so now that you've done that, we're going to be looking at what his narrative 5 stages are. And then as we go through, you can kind of see how they match or don't match the one that you've been doing. Alright, so the equilibrium then. So the equilibrium, we'll just read them through. If you don't like me reading through them, just skip through. The state of balance in the narrative, where we get to know the characters and the situation. And then we have the disruption. Opposition of characters and problems are introduced and the story moves forwards because of an inciting incident. And then we have a recognition of the disruption. So the story develops, different events and characters become involved, and more drama occurs as the hero realises the real problem they face. Now, the attempts to repair disruption, you'll notice that the attempts is a plural because it might require more than one attempt. A hero usually fails the first attempt. Where there may be a twist or climactic point as the hero tries to solve the problem / deal with the villain. Then the new equilibrium. So once everything's been solved and repaired, we have harmony. Things kind of settle, go back to normal, although things might have changed slightly. Okay, so just to recap them. So the equilibrium, just the daily life, day in, day out, what they have to deal with each day. Then the disruption, something has to go wrong. Obviously, nothing goes wrong, then nothing can. It's not really worth having a film if nothing goes wrong. We have the recognition of the disruption, so the characters have to realise there's a problem or realise the extent of it, and then we have the attempts to repair it. They have to try and solve that situation, and then we have the new equilibrium, so what life is like once that character has resolved that situation. We can look at the moment with the coronavirus, which can fit into this narrative theory really well. You've got the equilibrium, people going about their daily lives. The disruption, where we hear in China something going wrong with the virus spreading. We've got the recognition of the disruption, where people recognise that it's a bigger problem than they might think. You've got the attempt to repair the disruption, and right now I'm waiting on the prospect of the country being shut down, I suppose. So the attempt to repair the disruption, and that might go on for months now. And then the new equilibrium. Once everything's been resolved, what is this new world going to look like? Is it going to be people a bit more aware of how to deal with these sorts of outbreaks? Will it be thousands and thousands of people dead, etc.? Okay, so narrative theory doesn't just fit into films, books and TV shows or whatever. It also fits into our daily lives sometimes as well. Okay, so my example then with Frozen. Okay, so the first one, the equilibrium. Anna and Elsa cannot have a relationship because of Elsa's powers. Okay, you'll notice that I've cut out here the part where Elsa actually hurts Anna, because I kind of see that as a prologue. It's not necessarily part of the story. It's kind of like the backdrop of that story. Okay, that's the equilibrium. Then we have the disruption. All right, so when Elsa's crowned, crowned queen, that's just supposed to say. When Elsa is crowned queen, she shows her powers and runs into the forest, causing a permanent winter. That is the disruption. That is Elsa's life being disrupted. It is the people of Arundel's lives being disrupted. It's also Anna's life being disrupted a little bit further than it already was. The recognition of disruption. So Anna goes to find Elsa and is hurt by her. Hans sees the issues with the kingdom. Kristoff can't sell ice. Anna is hurt again by Elsa when she finds her. So we get this recognition of there's been a problem, and you'll notice that Anna, because of not really truly understanding it, she allows herself to get hurt. And then we have the attempts to repair. This is usually the longest part, hence the reason why this is the longest part here. So Anna and Kristoff visit the trolls and are told that only love can thaw a frozen heart. Anna tries to heal herself by finding Hans, but he reveals himself to be the villain. Oh yeah, kind of spoilers here. So Anna tries to heal herself by finding Hans, but he reveals himself to be the villain and refuses. Anna protects Elsa from death, and this becomes the act of love that she's healed. So these are the attempts to repair. So everyone's trying to fix something in their daily lives to kind of bring back this equilibrium. So we have then the new equilibrium. So the kingdom is unfrozen and they all live happily ever after, sort of. So Elsa's powers are being revealed, and that is her new equilibrium. Anna and Elsa being able to be sisters properly is their new equilibrium. Okay, so this is how his narrative theory fits into Frozen. Okay, but obviously we can't just focus on Frozen. We do have to bring it back to District 9. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video in just a second. I'll tell you when. I'd like you to pause the video, read through the summary of District 9, and I'd like you to decide, where does the equilibrium, disruption, recognition, attempt to repair, and the new equilibrium fit into that narrative. Okay, so I'm going to put the summary on here, but I do recommend, in fact, you should pause your video too to do this, which is to write down what each of these are. Okay, now let's have a look at this summary then. I'm not going to read it to you because it's about 500 words. Now, if this is too small on your screen, as I think it might be, I do recommend you, all I did was find the Wikipedia entry. You can use it off the top of your head, to be honest, if you know the film well. But so this is the summary of the film, and what I'd like you to do is place each of these elements onto that. Okay, so if it's the equilibrium, what is the daily life like for the people of South Africa in the film? How are their lives disrupted, or how is Vickers' life disrupted? What is his recognition? How does he become aware of the problem that he faces? And then we have the attempt to repair, and then the new equilibrium. So what they do is try and solve the situation, and what is the daily life like of each character when it finishes. Okay, so try and do that in 5 elements. Pause the video now. Okay, moving on then. So you kind of consider these the answers then. So the equilibrium. The aliens are treated unfairly by South African society. Vickers has an office job. The disruption. Vickers gets squirted in the face with the black liquid. Christopher is evicted. And then, I stopped writing them. So the recognition of the disruption is Vickers' fingernails, the favourite part of my students. Vickers' fingernails begin to fall off and he passes out at the party when he throws up all over the cake. And then the attempt to repair the disruption. So Vickers and Christopher, once they meet up, they break into M&U to steal the liquid. And then 2 big fight scenes have to occur. That is the disruption. That is the attempt to repair that disruption. But the new equilibrium is a little bit different to some of the Disney ones you might find, because Vickers is now an alien, so he doesn't, he's not in the body that he is anymore. His daily life hasn't reverted back, and then Christopher escapes. So we're kind of left with a cliffhanger. Lots of people, particularly my students, ask me, well, so why isn't there a sequel to this? And obviously they're missing the point there. They're not supposed to be a sequel, but it doesn't really fit into a clear new equilibrium, but all of the other elements do fit. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do then, the task. I would like you to choose 3 scenes from District 9, and I want you to do what's on the screen right now. So, where does each scene play in the narrative? Like, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Where does each scene kind of fit into that narrative? Okay, what purpose does each one serve to move the story forward? So, for example, you might have a scene like Vickers getting squirted in the face with a liquid. If you do not have that moment, the film doesn't really take place, the rest of it, does it? Or the part where he shoots the alien, where he's forced to shoot the alien, that kind of makes him a better person, doesn't it? So tell me how each scene fits into the wider narrative. Okay, and there's a bit of a challenge there. And then I want you to write down, how useful is the narrative theory for film? Do you think it's a useful tool in analysing film? So you can pause the video now and answer these questions. Remember, so the better way of wording this is, how does each scene fit into the film's narrative? Okay, pausing. Let's move on. Okay, so here's an example analysis of one that I did, and you're welcome to pause it, you're welcome to read it. I spelled Vickers wrong there. So, how does Blomkamp use Todorov's narrative to organise the film? District 9 effectively uses the opening of the film to be the establishment of the equilibrium. For example, it sets up the alien arrival, the thoughts of the locals, and what is happening. It also tells the backstory of how the aliens are treated. The director chose to open with this so that audiences fully understood the circumstances, and the use of the documentary style was to make it seem realistic so audiences felt the weight of the story. Also, giving hints at Vickers' death is a way of foreshadowing so that audiences know to look out for events that may lead to this. Therefore, the director has chosen to establish the equilibrium to allow a clear understanding of the setting, as well as being able to look forward to future events and how they might impact characters' behaviour. Okay, that analysis is done in a pedal format, so that's point, evidence, director's reason, audience reaction and then link back to the question. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video just a second, and I'd like you to explain how either the disruption, the recognition of the disruption, the attempt to repair the disruption, or the new equilibrium. So how are those effective? How are they used by Blomkamp, the director? Okay, so pause the video. Next. All right, your next task. You must write a summary for a story that includes all 5 elements of the narrative, as well as all of the character types. Ignore the character types, we'll come back to that in another lesson, okay? If you're stuck, adapt a film you've seen by changing it considerably, but keeping perhaps the stories or the location. Also, you must research who will star and direct your film. So what I want then is a, cut that, all I want is a summary of a story put into those 5 elements, and so tell me who the characters are, and who's going to play each one, okay? Try to be creative.